Hi everyone, we are finally back with a thought-provoking episode, provoking you and not maybe each other. Or maybe each other. As you may have guessed, we are not talking about those delicious Nabisco cookies, but rather the topic that has been in the news the last few months and has probably been ongoing since last year. Adam, do you want to fill out listeners, viewers who are not in the know about what's happening, what's going on?
Sure. So, as we all know, there's been a bit of a chip shortage over the last year or so. This is partially why the PS5 and the X series have had a hard time making it to store shelves. That said, it's due to the fact that these consoles are manufactured in bulk. Then that means when chips do arrive, they do get kind of first dibs because they're going to buy a lot of them at once, not just piecemeal. And this means that ultimately there are less chips available for PC gamers, for GPUs or graphics cards or any of that. And, or I guess a graphics card is that. And this in turn has had a few people wondering if we're looking at kind of a stagnation in the PC gaming industry in the immediate future as we're not able to produce these higher end graphics cards. How are developers going to be able to get people to play their high end games?
That's definitely a good point. I mean, I'd like to add as well that there are like a huge number of factors. There's the fact that fabs take a long time to build, and people pre-purchase production as well, which we'll get into later on in the topics. So sometimes a fab might have production, but they can't give it out to somebody else because somebody has already pre-purchased that. I listened to it on a podcast that because of pandemic, Ford and GM and a bunch of the other car companies say, people are not going to buy cars, but actually people are like, yeah, we want to move out to the countryside, or we want to buy new houses in the countryside. We don't want to live in the city anymore, and so people ended up buying more cars. They're like, oh my God, we need the chips, and then they had already given away their production to somebody else. Oh my God, I almost dropped my milk tea. Yeah, so that is another issue, but we'll get into that in the topic. But before we do, some breaking news from yesterday, news that we have covered before. I mean, most recently is the Sony story, which is the headline from Engadget. Sony reverses decision to close PS3 and Vita stores this summer. So, Adam, do you want to take that?
I mean, you're the one that found it, so yeah, I don't know any details on this, but that's kind of interesting. I'm actually kind of surprised that they did that. Sony usually, yeah, they usually don't do things like that. Usually, when they say they're going to do something, they do it, especially if it's something that's not exactly consumer friendly.
I mean, I'll read the highlights for you. Sony has backtracked on its decision. This is just straight from the Engadget article by Chris Holtz, April 19th, 2021, which is yesterday. To shut the PlayStation Store on PS3 and PS Vita this summer, you'll be able to buy games through the digital storefront on those consoles for the foreseeable future. However, the company will shut down the PSP store on July 2nd. After that date, you'll still be able to download any PSP games you have previously purchased. Sony Interactive Entertainment President and CEO Jim Ryan wrote in a blog post that after more reflection on the planned PS3 and Vita store closures, it's clear that we made the wrong decision here. So today I'm happy to say that we will be keeping the PlayStation Store operational for PS3 and PS Vita devices. Ryan said that Sony initially made the call for several reasons, including being able to more focus on platforms where most of its users are currently playing games, such as the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. He also cited commerce support challenges for older systems. Okay, and that's pretty much it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the PSP store actually being shut down though isn't that big of a deal because you can still buy all the PSP games, or at least most of them that were available on the online store on the Vita. So you can still have access to the PSP's games on the Vita. So I guess shutting down the Vita store isn't that big of a deal in that regard. Kind of like if people were saying, "Oh, we're shutting down the PS4 store," but you can still buy all the PS4 games on the PS5. Uh, so I don't think there are too many. I guess the PSP ended production back in 2014. So it's been a good long 7 years since the last time you could even get a new PSP. It's been a while for the Vita too. What, 3 years now? 2 years now? So, I mean, yeah, it's good news. I haven't bought something on my Vita though in a super long time. I would personally prefer if they just put back the PS3 and the PS Vita on the online store and just allowed you, just put a tab or something, and separate so that it's not, if you're browsing games, it's not there. There's a dedicated tab purely for those games. Um, just because it's easier to navigate than the in the in-app stores. I haven't used the PS3 store in forever. The Vita store I've navigated a few times. Um, but yeah, it's kind of an interesting reversal there. I was kind of hoping that what they were going to do was just create some sort of emulator, or add them to some sort of service like PS Now or something like that to the PlayStation 5, and I could play all my games there. But also in related news, I heard that I forget who it was, but the guy came out and he said that PlayStation was working on a Game Pass competitor.
Oh, okay. I've seen rumors along that line, I think, on Twitter, which would be interesting.
Yeah, so that news broke. I mean, this is a rumor. It's not confirmed by any means, but that news broke shortly after the news of them shutting down the store. So I was thinking, oh, okay, they're going to do this thing where they're going to add their library to this service. And so that's why they're shutting down the stores, because you're going to be able to play the games through this library. So that's how you would access them. But yeah, I don't know. Because also I wasn't sure at the same time, because first party games are easy, but third party games not so easy to negotiate things like that.
Plus, I think PlayStation would be on the back foot because Microsoft has the Windows 10. 99. I think it's gone down 1%. 94% of the market with Windows, and the Xbox Game Pass being compatible on Windows, and the integration between Windows, Xbox Game Pass, everything all in like a seamless interface as well. And it's that would be extremely difficult to beat. I would imagine
Oh yeah.
that Sony would have to have some sort of computer Windows accessibility option.
I think PS Now is on PC, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's only got older titles.
Yeah, exactly. See, that I thought that they were going to do something like that, where they were going to have something with all these older titles on there, like PS Now, and adding them there. So then it's like, okay, well, we don't need to sell them on the PSP because they are preserved in this other form. So,
But yeah, no, I mean, if PlayStation, I'd love to play some first-party PlayStation titles on my PC, streaming or no streaming. But we're actually going to get into that in our second topic.
oh, okay.
And our second breaking news item is, I'm going to read it from the title again. Microsoft's xCloud beta arrives on iOS and PC this week. And invite-only beta begins for xCloud via the web. This is from TheVerge.com. Tom Warren, April 19th, 2021. Again, I'll read a little bit. The service will arrive on devices via browsers, allowing Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers to play Xbox games on iPhones, iPads, and PCs. Microsoft is keeping this beta rather limited, though, and requiring players to be invited to participate in the testing phase. The service will be accessible at www.xbox.com/play, where Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers will be invited to the beta, will be able to play Xbox games through their browsers. More than 100 games will be available, and testers will be able to use a compatible Bluetooth or USB connected controller, or simply use custom touch controls. The limited beta is our time to test and learn. We'll send out more invites on a continuous basis to players in all 22 supported countries. Taiwanese gamers, we are not there, unfortunately.
We are not included. Usually when people say X amount of countries, Taiwan's not typically included in that number.
No, it is not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, yep. What do you think?
This is their streaming service, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, this is going back to what we were talking about before with the chips. I mean, I think that right now people are kind of panicking, but in the long run, with PC gaming and stuff like that, once we get to a point where streaming becomes the norm, I don't think chips are going to matter.
I mean, you just went where I wanted to go as well, because I'm like, man, maybe this is the catalyzing factor for streaming games or gaming streams, is that Microsoft and other sort of gaming stream companies can say, hey, yeah, we have the cloud. I mean, Nvidia makes their own hardware that's required for streaming games. So, I mean, they have that advantage that Microsoft's got the money. Yeah, why would you buy a graphics card if you can just stream everything? And you can just buy your GTX 1030 for 3,000 Taiwanese dollars, or how much is that actually? That's 50? No, yeah, $100, and that's good enough to run your system, and then you just stream games straight from xCloud or Nvidia GeForce Now.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of benefits to things like that. For example, obviously people don't have to worry about buying nice graphic cards or anything like that anymore. Now it's just a matter of can your bandwidth handle it? You could just have a really, that's why what was it, Phil Spencer was talking about an Xbox dongle that you just plug into your TV, and it's the equivalent of whatever the greatest Xbox currently is, because it's just going to stream from that hardware somewhere else. And also, I mean, it could benefit things like, for example, online gaming, with people using certain cheats like bots and lag switching and that sort of thing. If all the games are being run remotely, it's going to be a lot harder to mod your game to give you advantages and stuff like that. You can't really hack into the system so easily, because it's just the input and output of your controller, basically, or the output of the screen and the input of your controller, and you can't really modify. I mean, you could do things like, say, rapid fire, like by pressing a button or something like that, but you can't do, like, seeing people through walls, or lag switching or anything like that. And it's going to keep everybody kind of on the same clock. It's not, one of the couple games that I played a while back when my connection wasn't that good, things like lag switching, where what I'm seeing is registering on a delay. So, I'm in a certain area, but on their computer, it looks like I'm somewhere else. And then when it updates, it realizes I'm somewhere else and it moves me. So if they're hitting me, it's not registering as a hit, because my computer's saying, no, he's not there. And, but here, like, everything's being done in one centralized location. So it could really eliminate a lot of cheating. So, but it does kind of make you wonder if you could still theoretically play, like, if you were a competitive gamer, right? Like some of these competitive hardcore streamers, would they still be able to build a rig if they wanted to have that, like, kind of like just the latency thing kind of fixed, and like having just that slight edge of being able to process things slightly closer to home?
I'm sure they could. I mean, maybe that will. I figure streaming gaming will enable a lot of people who competitive gamers, they're sponsored by someone and an esports company who's usually tied to some sort of hardware or software or big company, and those guys can get the hardware. They can get their, 3080 GT RTX 3080s or their 6900 XC from AMD's, those $1,000 plus cards. But for the regular people like you, like me, from like most of our middle-aged gaming audience, I know our students and stuff, it's very hard to convince your mom or dad, or it's very hard to convince the wife, or it's just very hard to find a card right now. And articles have been flying this week. They've been saying, uh, don't expect the chip shortage to improve for at least until 2023. So that means, like, I mean, that scares the living daylights out of me. If I lose my card, I'm gonna have to buy a whole new computer, which is 2-3 thousand US dollars, maybe more, uh, because I just can't buy. Or I have to find some way to order a card from outside town, or find somebody who has a card in some country and say, "Hey, ship it to me." And you know, yeah, it's complicated. And I think going back to streaming gaming as well is, because I mean, with my other job, I've been spending a lot of time, doing research in Sweden. Like the Swedish government, very early on, they laid fiber throughout the entire country. So when you build a house in Sweden, you're automatically linked to Swedish fiber, guaranteed, no matter where you build it. That's what they started doing way back 20, 30 years ago. And I mean, it is, I mean, that's one of the reasons land is expensive in Sweden. But I mean, there you go. If governments, and a few Asian countries have done that. Taiwan is pretty good when it comes to internet. Adam's house is the exception because he's stuck in that nook.
Yeah, and our house is old and it was built before internet was a thing, so.
But yeah, and I mean, with the invention of 5G and stuff, things are going to get a lot better. So I think game streaming is only going to become an upward trend.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely think that this might help alleviate some of the chip shortage. And then again, like, for example, if you're xCloud, you're going to be buying these, if you're building the hardware to support this server farm, you're going to be buying a lot of chips in bulk. So
Exactly.
yeah, so then that's going to be more of an incentive to, oh yeah, let's give it to this guy because he's going to be buying tons of chips.
Exactly. And they have the cash, and there's no
And the
worries about their
connections.
future and stuff. They're in the post-pandemic or currently during the pandemic. Yeah, they're one of the companies like Amazon, like a lot of the big tech gaming companies have done really, really, really well monetarily speaking. So uh, any production or chip fab, they're most likely to sell to them because they're guaranteed to pay a premium price, like Apple did
Yeah.
for their chips. Okay, and wow, we're doing pretty well on time so far. So, on to the last story that is not a surprise for Adam. Is this person, whoever that person is, Valkyrie?
Yes, Valkyrie.
Yeah, do you want to tell us what this is about?
Okay, so if you've played, so there was a thing talking about, and the next Apex character was going to be bringing in Apex more in line with Titanfall, and people really weren't sure what that meant. There was rumors of a character who might bring in kind of a Titan as a kind of turret unit or something like that, which ultimately would have been kind of OP. But this is the character as Valkyrie, and Valkyrie's backstory is that if you've played Titanfall 2, there's a boss in Titanfall 2 named Viper. And Viper is a rival pilot who has a custom North Star. And North Star is one of the lighter Titans. And it's known for basically its flight capabilities. So in the game, you can kind of do this hover thing with North Star, but his custom North Star is a boss, and it basically has unlimited flight, so it flies around the level as you're trying to destroy it. And so your pilot in Titanfall 2 defeats this guy, kills this guy. Well, Valkyrie is the daughter of Viper.
Wow.
Yeah, so basically he was part of a group called Apex. I guess they're the guys who are running the Apex Legends what do you call it, competition or whatever. And so he had his custom North Star. She always wanted to be a pilot like him. When he died, she got really, really angry and mad, and she salvaged his North Star, took the flight core out of it, and I guess now she's kind of reconfigured that into some kind of jetpack. So she's going to be the first player who can actually kind of fly around. And I don't really know exactly what that's going to entail. I don't know if it's going to be more like North Star and Titanfall, where she just kind of hovers over the arena, or if it's going to be like a free flight kind of thing. I don't really know. In some ways, it seems really, really cool because it's like, oh, hey, you can traverse areas really, really quickly and you can get around quite a bit. But at the same time, it's like you're going to be a sitting duck in the air. So it'll be interesting to see what her kit is and how it works out, because it does look, to me, it looks like she's got kind of the missile pods on the side that North Star has. So it looks like she's kind of got a condensed version of what a North Star is on her back. So, but yeah, she'll be coming out. And then also they're going to release their first bow weapon into the game.
Nice.
So they say it's going to be high damage, but you're going to have to be skilled with it. So I guess it's going to have quite a bit of an arc to it. And
okay.
yeah, and it's going to be slow because you have to notch each arrow and stuff like that. So, but yeah, they're going to be adding that. And yeah, that's the news for the new season.
Remind people, including me as well. So like these guys are coming out. If I was to get into Apex, I wouldn't be able to play with her, right? Because I'd have to like buy the season pass or something like that.
I'm not sure about if you have to buy the season's pass for her or not. The way Apex works is when you complete certain achievements, you get a star. And after a certain number of stars, you go up a level. And when you go up a level, then you would get this kind of Apex box thing. And you can open that up and it'll give you things like materials or skins or that sort of thing. And you can use these materials to unlock certain characters and skins and stuff like that. But also every time you level up, you're given about, I think it's like 600 Apex points or something like that. And then you can buy new characters for 12,000. So for every, what is that? 24 levels, you could buy a new character.
So even if you have the money, but you haven't reached the number of levels, you can't buy that certain character.
Well, no, if you have the real world money, you can just buy the character outright.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
But I'm saying you can buy the game. They can buy the character within game currency.
Oh, okay. I'm like,
so yeah. You're given like 600 of this in-game currency, and then for every level, and then it's 12,000 to unlock a new character.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so in game, man, I'm like, cause if you're just new and you're just listening today, I talked about Adam for us playing together, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to wait to get a particular character, so I might just plop down the real money.
Yeah, you can do that. You can just pop down the real money and buy characters
Oh, cool, cool,
and
cool.
skins and that sort of thing.
That's
So
great
yeah,
for us who are working people and who don't have a lot of time to play Apex, but want to play with somebody who perhaps fits our playstyle.
yeah. I haven't quite gotten into the crafting yet, so I'm not quite sure how that works. I do kind of wish they did something like League of Legends. In League of Legends, what they would do is you have a set of, I think it's, I don't remember if it's like 6 or something, but they have a set of characters every week, and it changes from week to week. So if you don't own any characters, you can always play as these characters. And the idea is that it'll let you play as that character for the week, and then the next week it'll turn over to a new set of characters, and that way you can experiment with different characters and see which ones you like. And then you could save up for the characters that you enjoyed playing as. And I really like that they would cycle these characters out.
That's cool.
And in Apex, I don't think they do that. In Apex, I think you just have the original set of characters, and then if you want to get another character, I don't think you can try them out. I think you just have to unlock them.
But League has like hundreds of people, right? Or hundreds of.
Yeah, League has tons and tons and tons.
I mean,
of
it makes
characters.
sense for them.
Yeah, and then also in League, I mean, the characters function vastly differently. In Apex, they function pretty much the same because it's primarily based on gunplay. It's just their passive, their basic, and their ultimate are what differentiate them. And you can kind of, I mean, you can click on them and see what those abilities are. So you get a pretty good idea of what they can do. For example, there's a character who I don't remember her name, but she can drop down a turret that anybody can kind of climb into and use. So you right away already know what that is. You don't have to like test it out to see how it feels because it's just going to be drop a turret. So, or another character who can use a drone, or another character who I don't remember what their other abilities are. I don't remember what the abilities are off the top of my head, but yeah, they all kind of have these. Yeah, you can just see what it is. You don't have to really test them out because everyone's going to play effectively the same with the same weapons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but with flight, I don't know. That might drastically change how it feels.
But like you said, I think it's a good. It's if you have the abilities, you could use it really well, and it's sort of a good mix of yes, I get to maneuver well, but yes, I'm also a sitting duck, like you said.
Yeah.
So I like when games do that, sort of have like innovative things, but still keep them well balanced.
Yeah, I would have just, like I said, I would have liked to see it that if they did, say, maybe 1 or 2 characters every week that were free and it cycled.
That's definitely great. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and we're back to the main topic. Hi, Vishal.
He's supposed to be going to America today.
Oh, wow, really?
That's what he said. Yesterday he was on my stream and he said that he's going to be going to the U.S. to study.
Oh, nice. Oh, okay. I mean, I guess I'll ask him, are you on your way to the airport? Or at the airport?
Or on the plane.
Or on the plane, yes, yes, yes. Planes do have Wi-Fi now.
Yeah, I never use it though. Usually have to pay for it.
God, I've only been on the plane with Wi-Fi like twice. But let's get into the topic. So,
Sure.
um,
Doing good.
how do you hear that? Oh, it's on your chat.
Yeah. Well, it's on my chat, but also I have
Auditory, yes, because I heard that.
Oh, yeah, well, it's too loud then on my end. I should turn it down. All right, so Vishal's asking how we're doing. We're doing good.
Ah, he's on the way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's very cool.
All right. Change my notification too. All right, so you were talking about chip shortages
Yes, yes, yes. What's your take?
on
Everything. I mean,
everything.
I posted a bunch of questions on here, so I mean, you can take it wherever you want to go.
Okay. So why is it happening now? Well, I think largely it's a factor of the pandemic. We got to a point where, a lot of factories were shut down for a really, really long time. And now these factories are starting to open up. But even when factories do open up, we're having, rolling quarantines. And, it's really hard to get all this stuff in order. And it's not just the factories manufacturing them, it's also distribution. I mean, we just, stores aren't open, or maybe shipping isn't doing as well. I mean, the Evergreen fiasco, I'm sure, stalled a bit. That thing was huge. I'm sure there were some chips on there. So yeah, I think it's just the times we live in. It's just harder to get, and then also too with things like sanctions on different countries. I mean, obviously, a lot of these things are manufactured in China. Some of them are manufactured in America. The smallest and the best ones are manufactured in Taiwan.
Oh
But
yeah.
oh yeah, but yeah, I think with just the geopolitical situation going on, I think it's really kind of hard to. Yeah, I think it's just a perfect storm of all these things hitting at once.
Okay. I'll add to that like I've a friend of ours in Taiwan. These sort of semiconductor companies and factories are located in what they call them science parks. And there's one in Tainan, which is north of where we are, and the biggest one is in Hsinchu, which is close to Taipei. And so I'll let Adam reply to that. So the biggest one is close to Taipei, and we have a friend who I played games with the last night, which is why I didn't stream last night. He has mentioned to me before, like when COVID was quite a bit more serious here, that in the science parks, if one employee was sick, the government mandate they'd have to shut down the factory for a week at least. Just one person in a company in a factory of thousands of people. We're talking. Taiwan is a small place, 23 million people, but yeah, one person was sick, so that would ruin production. So the company like where he works at, they took COVID very, very seriously, and they have factories in China as well. And if their coworker came back, they're like, "Yeah, you need to stay away for the mandatory 2 weeks plus an extra 1 week, and no pay as well," which is of course a typical Taiwanese company way. So yeah, I mean things like that I can imagine slow stuff down, all the extra rules, all the extra worry. Um, so I mean, let me hit you with another question then, Adam. We've heard in the news, right? Companies going to be building new fabs. Fabs are factories that produce semiconductors. Things are going on in America. Things are going on in Samsung. What do you think is going to happen in the next 3, 4 years? I mean, early on I said they don't expect the shortage to, improve for the next 2 years. So, I mean, in your opinion, what's going to happen in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
Honestly, I don't think we're going to see too much change. I think it's going to be business as usual in the now sense, not the previous sense. I know Taiwan is working on, we manufacture, was it what are they called? Micrometers? Microns?
Nanometer.
Nanometers. So we currently are producing 4 nanometer chips and are developing 3 nanometer chips. And I heard that they're actually opening up a new factory in America, in the US, to produce chips. But the thing is this. So people were like, "Oh, now we're gonna be able to make our own chips," and it's like, no. Apparently, the technology to manufacture 4, or even once we get it 3 nanometer chips, is not going to be leaving Taiwan. So any factory outside Taiwan is going to be manufacturing 5 nanometer chips. So we might be getting, with more factories, you might be getting more chips, but it's not going to be the really high end ones. That's going to stay in Taiwan. And even if, all these factories open up, I mean, Taiwan's not a huge country, so they're only going to be able to manufacture so many chips. We don't have the workforce that China has. So even if we are at full production. There's never going to be that many 4 nanometer chips, which is good in a way for Taiwan because it gives them some bargaining power in the political sphere, because they can say, hey, we got the best chips. If you guys want that, you gotta help us out. You gotta work with us. You can't work around us.
True.
So I think from that perspective, because I think from some people's perspective, that could be seen as kind of like a selfish thing, like, hey, why are you doing this? It's, oh, you guys are just doing this as a power play. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, if any country needs bargaining power, it's Taiwan. So I can't blame them for that. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see too much of a change in the near future.
Yeah, and I mean to add to what Adam said is like we know in Kaohsiung where Adam and I live, TSMC, the golden fab manufacturer, semiconductor manufacturer, is they're opening up a new factory in Kaohsiung, which is, I mean, fantastic, thousands of jobs, construction jobs. But even in Taiwan, that's affected the construction industry because they've committed 100 billion US dollars. Now that is a lot of money in Taiwanese dollars to building another fab in beyond the Kaohsiung one in 3 years. So if you know, like I work in construction, not really myself, but in an architecture company, and my boss was complaining. He was like, they've swallowed up a lot of the good construction companies that would be working on residential commercial projects because, hey, they said, we're a TSMC, we have 100 billion US dollars, we're going to pay you top dollar if you exclusively commit to building these fabs for us. So a lot of the architecture companies in Taiwan are like, well, but we want to build apartment buildings, we want to build houses, but well, sorry, you can't do that because you're going to have to rely on the lower tier construction companies in order to do that now.
It's the chip thing all over again. Whoever has the biggest bulk order gets the first dibs.
Oh, it reminds me of somebody. I think one of your cousin. No, not your cousin. Your brother-in-law said this. We should probably explain why smaller chips are better.
Because they're smaller, they take up less space, so you can fit more into the same amount of space.
I mean, beyond that.
I'm not entirely sure on my own myself. I'm
Oh,
a
okay.
software guy more than a hardware guy.
So one of the reasons smaller chips are better is smaller chips use less power and they fit more transistors on the CPU. More transistors means more power. So that's why like AMD's new line of graphics cards came a long way because they're smaller than Nvidia's graphics cards. So a lot of like 3 years ago, their Vega graphics cards came out. They were big cards. They used a lot of power, and they didn't do that well graphically speaking. But now their new line of graphics cards use even less power because they're smaller, and they do pretty well. Those are the same cards in the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, as well as the CPUs and stuff. So that's a big thing. That's why all these companies and why TSMC has done so well is because they've been investing in making things smaller and smaller. They do the chips for the Apple M1s. Apple M1s are fantastic chips if you've not been following, and that's another reason is Apple's committed to buying 25% of TSMC's production for 2022 already, and they've paid a premium, and that means TSMC literally has 75% of their production to give to Nvidia, to give to all these other companies. So I wanted to get your perspective. So with the chip shortage, how do you think that's going to affect console gamers, console gaming, that sort of stuff moving forward?
Okay, so we just entered the next generation of consoles, so we're probably not going to be looking at a situation where we're not going to be looking at the next gen of consoles anytime soon, at least 6 years down the line. And we're probably not going to be looking at anything like a PS5 Pro or anything like that for the next 3 years or so. So seeing as they say the chip shortage thing isn't going to sort itself out until 2023, I don't think we're going to see anything other than just shortages like what we're seeing now, where they just don't have enough manufactured to meet demand. But as far as, I don't think it's going to impact too much consoles as far as moving forward, because when we're actually looking for the next evolution of consoles, we should that's actually beyond what this shortage is predicted to do. So by the time, say, Sony or Xbox are working on their next generation, this will probably be sorted out. And this is something, I mean, people have been saying for a while. That when the PS4 came out, people were saying, "Oh, the PS4 might be the last console generation," or the when the Xbox One came out, this might be the last console generation. We might just move into PC gaming because consoles are effectively becoming PCs anyway. And those rumors came up again, when PS5 and the Xbox X series came out. Oh, this could possibly be the last console generation. And this time it was for a different reason. This time it was because, game streaming might be the future. So where's the point in having consoles in the future? So if game streaming becomes a thing, like a big thing, I don't think, that might actually come to fruition, and we might not really be seeing full-blown consoles in the next generation. We might just be seeing dongles, like what Phil Spencer said. And on a dongle, you're not going to need that many chips. You're going to need far fewer than what they're using now. And if there is another generation, I think it's just so far ahead in the future that it's going to outlast, or it's going to, come after this shortage anyway. So basically, this shortage would have to extend, which would mean that we're looking at things that we can't predict right now because they haven't happened yet.
I mean, but what about the people who can't get consoles? I mean, because
Ah,
when we look at America, right, I think America's gotten, most of the vaccines and not to mention most of the consoles. So what about the other countries? People who are like, yeah, I want a PS5, but I'm sorry, you're living in Uganda, or you're living in South Africa, or you're living in Argentina, and yeah, you're on the bottom of the list for people who can get a console. How is the chip shortage? I mean, the chip shortage is gonna affect these people's perception of those companies and those consoles and console gaming as a whole.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's really going to affect their perception of these companies. Yeah, I think it would affect their perception of the company if one company broke into the market and the other didn't. It's not, like if you're in a country and you can get Xboxes, but you can't get PlayStations, that's going to make you lean Xbox. And obviously the opposite's true, where if you can get Switches and you can't get Xboxes and PlayStations, that's going to sway them in Nintendo's favor or whatever. But I think if it's one of those things where if it's shortages across the board, it's just something that you're like, I don't necessarily like this situation, but I don't really have an option. And it's not, you know what I mean? Like if you love everybody equally or you hate everybody equally, it's mad, but it's not changing your buying habits given your opportunity.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what you're saying is, I mean, if you're not in like the primary markets, perhaps there's a drastic change of market share in some of these sort of third world countries, or I'm from a third world country, that's not a bad thing.
Is
But
it
yeah,
really a third world country? It's not considered a first world country as one of America's allies?
South Africa? No,
Oh, okay.
no. Definitely still third world. But yeah, I mean, would that mean that previously, like you mentioned, if in Chile you could only get PlayStations, but suddenly PlayStation is not providing consoles to your region, or they're only providing 50 consoles to the whole country, and Xbox comes in and says, "Oh, okay, I see PlayStation doesn't have consoles. They've prepared more than enough." That means the console market's going to swing in some countries.
I definitely could see that happening. I mean, isn't that kind of people have been saying is happening in Japan, where Sony focused away from Japan and Microsoft's kind of swooping in and trying to grab a chunk of the Japanese market by saying, "Hey, PlayStation abandoned you, but look, you know, Uncle Xbox is here to save the day." So yeah, I mean, that's what people are saying could happen in Japan. So yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, people want to game, and if you people have brand loyalty, but I think they're more loyal to gaming than they are to the Xbox or they are to the PlayStation. So if there's a choice of gaming on your less preferred console or not gaming at all, I think people would still say, "I want to game."
Okay. Um, Now, a big issue with the chip shortage, with the GPU shortage, with the console shortage, I mean, every shortage possible has been scalpers.
Yes.
Why, I mean, if anybody from AMD or Nvidia or Sony or Microsoft are watching, what do you think is solution to scalping?
I don't think there is necessarily one big solution because it's all in the distribution. And so, for example, because scalpers are going to be creative no matter what you do. It's kind of like an arms race in a way. The distributors come up with a solution, and then the scalpers come up with a different solution. One of the things that scalpers were doing is they were buying in bulk. As when they log in, they would buy 20 PS5s or 20 Xboxes at once. And here in Taiwan, the all the websites and stuff were basically saying, okay, you can only buy one console. So if you go to you have your accounts and you can only buy one console per account. Well, if you're a scalper, your response to that is, okay, I'm going to create a bot that's going to track 20 different accounts and order it on each account, which might slow you down because each account needs to log in separately. But, it's still faster than people, you know? So, yeah, and then I'm sure there's some level of nepotism in certain areas, where a scalper is like, hey, buddy, I know that you guys are getting this. I mean, that's how I got my PS5 was basically through nepotism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if I could definitely see scalpers using those channels, and it's kind of like greasing the palms of the store. Like if the store, it's like, hey, you know what, I'll buy 20 Xboxes off of you, and I'll give you an extra $10 per Xbox, and then I'll give you I'll give you an extra 50% on each Xbox. But then when I'm selling the Xboxes online, I'm doing a 200% markup, right? So I'm sure now I don't think most scalpers are doing that, but I'm sure there are a few. But I think the one console per customer is probably the best policy to do. And I think a lot of this is partially due to the pandemic and the fact that everything is being sold online. You can't go into a store. If I think if people could walk into stores, a store has 500 Xbox, not even that many. Let's say a store has 50 Xboxes, right? Nobody's going to walk into the store and walk out with 20 Xboxes. That's just way too obvious, right? If you have a long line of people, because people are going to do like what they did with Star Wars, they're going to line up 3 days in advance and camp out, right? But that you're guaranteed one because you showed up on that day. But online, somebody can find some sneaky way to get out, and there's not that I can see you walking out with multiple consoles and that sort of thing. So I think opening stores would actually be the best thing for this,
Okay.
even though it's probably the worst idea in the pandemic. But I think as far as consoles, I think if we can get past the pandemic and start putting things physically in stores, I think that's going to be your best bet, because there's going to be people that are going to camp out, and there's people that are going to drive across state lines to find some random store in the middle of Missouri where they know the population is just a bunch of old people that's going to have some in stock, right? So they're going to drive hundreds of miles to get it. But yeah, when it's online, yeah, basically you're at the whims of your internet connection and you being able to type as fast as a bot.
I mean, do you think the onus is not on stores like Best Buy, like Walmart, like, I was gonna say Fry's, but Fry's is no more. Micro Center, I mean, like Amazon and other stuff to say, hey, please verify who you are, or just like you said, limiting it to one person per store, or verifying identities, or if somebody is scalping stuff on eBay or scalping stuff on Rakuten or Yahoo Shopping in Taiwan, that they say, hey, sorry, this price is X percentage above MSRP. We're not allowing you to sell it for that.
If it's like yeah, I could definitely see something like Amazon or something, or eBay, going in and saying, hey, you can't sell this for X amount over. And as far as the stores, yeah, I think that early on they were unprepared and they really should have put more things. I think that's part of the reason why in Taiwan they started doing the one console per customer things, because they saw what happened in other countries and they were like, uh-oh, obviously we don't want that problem, so we need to find a solution around it. So yeah, I think it's on the store. I don't think it's on Sony or Microsoft because I mean, when they ship them out to the warehouse, I mean, if it's on their online store, yeah, it's on them. But once they ship it out to Walmart, you know, you can't blame them for what Walmart does with those.
True, true, true.
So
Okay. So we're down to the biggest topic of today, the topic that affects middle-aged gamers, affects me, affects Adam. Uh, that this has been going on as well during the last month, maybe 45 days or so, as people are like, with all the chip shortages, and I constantly see it on Twitter. It's like, oh my God, you guys are selling the XXX card, or AMD had a MSI Radeon Black Edition 6800 XT, and they sent it out to all the people who belong to AMD's Team Red group, and of course, Scalpers got a hold of that. They're of course in that group, and that card was gone. People have said that this is going to be again, the death of PC gaming, or like the colorful computers that I have literally under my table right next to me, is that nobody's going to do that anymore. That's going to be sort of like a chain connecting these RGB fan makers and motherboards and flashy RAM companies and that sort of stuff, and that's going to change the way PC gaming works, maybe even console gaming, as you've mentioned before. Um, what do you think is going to happen? Is it
why
going to
would they get rid of the
change?
flashy games?
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say flashy games, flashy hardware.
Why would you get rid of the flashy stuff?
I mean, because if you can't get a GPU, there's sort of, why do you need a flash? I mean, you need a GPU to run your whole cool system.
Right.
And if
So
you go,
you just buy a. You're just saying you wouldn't have a GPU at all, or are you saying like
I'm saying it's
just
like I
gonna buy
wouldn't
an
have a
ugly one?
computer.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes, because I mean, all of this stuff is sort of is a performance level stuff,
Right.
and if you don't have a performance level GPU, why would you buy a terrible 2 GB DDR5 GPU and put it inside with your hyperspeed RAM and your 12 core 24 thread CPU? Yeah.
Well, okay. So you have what? You have a 1080.
Yes.
Okay. So if your card died, it's hard to get the newer ones. Could you still get a 1080?
No, no. I mean, in the news as well this week is Nvidia is remanufacturing older cards, 1660s, 1650s, uh, that sort of stuff, because there's such a big demand for it. Yeah, no, I would not. I'm sure I could try to find one, but it would be hard.
So you'd have to get a card even lower than what you have now.
I basically what I'd have to do, because I wouldn't want to get a card lower, is I'd have to buy a whole new computer, which is the only way to get a new card.
Oh, okay.
Or
See, I thought you could still get like some of the older stuff, but I
even
didn't
that
realize it
is
was that old.
incredibly difficult. Like even the 1660 for my other machine, we had to build a whole new computer, and that is a card from 3 years ago.
Mm.
Yeah, we had to build a whole. The store said, "Yeah, we don't sell cards. You have to buy a whole new machine, like they do in America now."
Yeah, and Bitcoin mining isn't helping that.
No, no, no. Believe
Because
me.
again, they're able to buy multiple graphics cards in bulk.
Yeah, yeah. There's even companies are coming out with mining cards, and another news item was mining cards now have just 3-month warranties on them. So after 3 months, if your mining card dies, that's it. That's your fault.
Oh wow. Yeah. I mean, if we move into streaming gaming, that's obviously going to solve all of our problems because it's not going to matter how much your computer can process because it doesn't process anything. But also, I think I don't think people should worry that much. I mean, wasn't the whole point of GOG is that you're playing older games that aren't this graphically intensive or that sort of thing? So, I mean, the fact that GOG is popular just kind of shows you that you don't need super fancy graphics to have fun, right? So there are plenty of old games that are going to run on potatoes or modern potatoes because a modern potato is still, better than a computer from 10 years ago, right?
That's true.
So I mean, yeah, I think, and then plus now personally I've seen it. I mean it's been a trend for a while, but a lot of people are kind of doing like these demakes. Have you seen a lot of these demakes that
What is a
people are doing
demake?
recently? A demake. Okay, so you have a game that's like a remake, right? So where you take, like, say, Resident Evil 2, and then you up it into modern graphics. So what's really popular right now is people will make kind of these videos of demakes. So like there's a demake of Control using original PlayStation graphics,
Oh, wow.
or there's a demake. It's only like I think the first level or something, and then there's a demake of Cyberpunk using the original PlayStation graphics.
Huh.
And yeah, and they added all the glitches in for fun. Uh, so it has all the glitches of modern Cyberpunk
Oh,
in the
man.
original PlayStation, like people just randomly T-posing and stuff like that. But yeah, so demakes are kind of these popular things, and we can see like a lot of games now are kind of going back to that classical sprite and pixel kind of thing. I mean, you were playing Littlewood, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Littlewood is not a graphically intensive game. That's a
No.
super simple game. I
Of
mean,
course.
and I mean, plus with mobile gaming, I mean, look at games like Fortnite. It can run on a phone. You know, if a game can run on a phone, it's going to be able to run on your computer. So you would only have to. I mean, and most phones. I think my phone. I don't know what the display is. It's probably at least 1080, right?
They're all new phones. The minimum are 1080.
Right. So I mean, you're not playing in 4K with 60 FPS, but I mean, you can play in 30 or sorry, yeah, but you can still play in 1080 at 30 FPS,
Sure.
you know, and
New high-end
that's
phones can do 4K, 60.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you're going to have a PC that can play games. You're just not going to have these super graphically intensive Call of Duties or The Witcher or whatever. You're going to see games that are maybe equivalent to. It'll be better than PS3 graphics. Like Mass Effect. You could play the
Yes.
original Mass Effect and it would run flawlessly on a modern potato. So I don't think I don't think I think this might actually, in a way, it'll hurt. It might hurt big companies, your EAs, your Square Enixes, your Bethesdas, maybe. But it might actually be a boon for indie games because now, these guys are like, well, hey, I wasn't going to do a super graphically intensive game anyway. So my games will still run great. And you might actually have to see, some of these bigger AAA companies might actually have to look at like, hey, should we make a game that's more like an indie to, downplay it, downgrade it in a way. And then plus, I mean, when you get to things like cell shaded graphics, you don't have to worry about things like textures.
Mm-hmm.
And that can greatly and that solves a problem in that with cell shading, it's going to age really, really well because it's not going to start, in 30 years, it's not going to start looking, like Borderlands still looks good, right? Because it's stylized.
Yes.
It's why sprites, if you go back and play the old Final Fantasies, like Final Fantasy 6 and before, they still look good. You play Final Fantasy 7 and it's a blocky mess, because it's polygons that look awful. But yeah, so I think I don't think it's a problem. I think it might change the kind of games we consume, but I don't think it's going to change our consumption of games.
I mean, do you worry about market segmentation of saying, okay, we're gonna have game streaming to phones, to iOS devices, to PCs, and the people living in first world countries, which have pretty good internet and 100 megabit broadband, they're the ones who are going to be playing these really awesome titles, and then people who live in poor internet countries and can't get graphics cards are going to be playing these sort of indie, low graphical fidelity titles, and that's going to sort of upset the console, maybe not console, the whole gaming market as a whole, or divide it into the haves and the have-nots?
I could see that, but aren't we already kind of there? I mean, how many of these smaller countries were getting high-end PCs anyway that they were able to play games like Cyberpunk, right? I mean, they were kind of already getting the scraps.
True.
Not just because of availability, but just because the economy and people's spending power, right? They just couldn't afford these kind of rigs. So I think it was already that. Plus, on the other hand, I mean, a lot of countries have really good internet. America kind of doesn't, right? America's internet's kind of bad. And America's a huge gaming market. I mean, China's obviously the biggest one, but and India's bigger, I'm sure, as well. But I think India primarily is mobile gaming, and China kind of does their own thing where because the way they regulate games and stuff, it's mostly Chinese games made for a Chinese market, and kind of like movies, they're really really picky on what games they'll allow to enter the country and whatnot. And a lot of their games, because they're specifically catering to a Chinese market, typically aren't localized, and so so they're kind of like a bubble in a way. And so because of that, I think for these higher end games, probably your largest market is actually America, because India's, I think, primarily mobile gaming. And so because of that, basically everybody's, was it chain's only as strong as its weakest link. And
True.
so, like game streaming is only going to be as strong as its weakest internet connection. And America being such a huge market, I think unless they end up doing 5G or, doing fiber or something, uh, I think I think it's gonna be. I wouldn't worry too much about it changing the dynamic it is now. I think it will be a problem for people in these countries, but I think it's already a problem for people in these countries. So I don't think it's gonna change that.
Okay. Okay, and I mean, with that, we're sort of ending towards our usual end segment. So you guys heard it straight from the knowledgeable brain that is Adam.
Not
Predictions
as
for
knowledgeable.
for
You're more
next year,
knowledgeable today.
for consoles, for gaming, what's going to happen. So take that into account when you're making purchases this year or you think about purchases next year. Chip shortages is going to be a thing. So if you have a nice computer like me or like Adam as well, and you're worried about your computer dying, you need to save money or keep some money around to replace the whole computer. I'm sure that's going to affect wastage and the environment and the electronics wastage industry as well. And that's it for this topic. Thanks for watching. Before we go, though, Adam, what do you think about next week?
Topics for next week. All right. Let's see. We can go back to games, I guess. I mean, unless you have another philosophical topic. I finished Haven and Children of Zodiacs this week, so I definitely have two games to talk about.
Oh, you do? Yes, yes, that's a very
Yeah.
good point as
Yeah, I
well.
just finished two this week, and then Nier, my PlayStation just finished downloading it, so I'll be starting that this week.
Oh,
And
is it already out?
no, it comes out on the 22nd, but you
What
could
day is it today?
pre-download.
21, 22. So you'll be able to stream it Friday.
I'll be able to stream it Friday, and that is the plan.
Nice.
But yeah, it's pre-downloaded, so it's on my console currently.
I mean, just out of curiosity, how big was the download?
That's a good question. I'm not quite sure. I know that I was playing Final Fantasy 15, sorry, 14, which actually just recently got their new patch out, and I missed my mount by one dungeon. I was very
Oh
sad.
no.
I know, it was disappointing. But yeah, so I was playing that, and it said downloading Nier, and then within about 15 minutes to half an hour, it said it was done. But I don't know if it told me that it was downloading when it started downloading, or if it had actually been downloading in sleep mode, and it was just informing me that it had already started downloading. So
Ah,
I'm not
okay.
quite sure. I could look it up, but
I'd be curious for next week.
yeah, I don't think it's that big because it is originally an Xbox 360 game.
Yes.
I don't even remember if it came out on the PS3. I think it might have later, but I think originally it was an Xbox game.
Yes.
And yeah, so it wasn't. I mean, it's been graphically enhanced, and I've heard that they've changed the combat a bit to make it more in line with Nier Automata and give it kind of an updated. And they've added some things that tie it into Automata a little bit more, I've heard. So there's going to be more of a clear link between the two, as opposed to kind of a contextual link if you know the two worlds. But yeah, I don't think it's that big.
Okay. Okay.
And it is a PS4 game. There is no PS5 version. So
Okay.
yeah.
Oh,
But I will be
okay.
playing that on Friday. That's my plan. So tomorrow should be Apex, and
Friday,
Friday will be
Nier.
Nier. Yeah.
Nice.
And next week I'll have to pick a third game because I only have two. So maybe Final Fantasy 15. I'll go into that for a while, or maybe I'll do Watam, which is made by the guys who made Katamari.
I was thinking maybe we do a combination show next week, sort
Sure.
of. Like I said, your two games. You can talk
Okay.
about that, and then maybe we end off the show or start off the show talking about our ideas for adding additional hosts and
Oh
content,
yeah.
what's going to happen, and sort of do like a big, all-encompassing housekeeping episode about YouTube and streaming wise. I mean, streaming is not going to change too much, but the podcast and maybe we'll finally get back to making videos in the future.
I
Exciting
hope so.
news.
Yes. I haven't made a video in a long time, and I
Me
really
neither.
should.
I haven't had the time. I've been thinking about stuff and there's so many ideas. I write them down. I'm like, one day, one day. On a side note, I mean, since we're on air, Antoine said he's interested as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I haven't talked to Ben, but talked to Phil, and he's on board.
Yes. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so that's it for us. So next week we will have a combination episode. We'll talk about Adam's games he's finished, do our housekeeping, talk about things that are going to happen to the show, the podcast, and maybe you guys will be going back to getting 2 podcasts a week, potentially, which would be awesome. I'm sure you'd love stuff to listen to. I love stuff to listen to when I ride my bicycle, so I'm all
Yeah.
for that. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you have any thoughts about the chip shortage or you want to complain about not being able to buy a GPU or a PlayStation 5 wherever you are, please, we're happy to listen. We're happy to look at your weird shortage memes as well. No problem. Send those along. We could even feature them on our Instagram channel. I posted something on Twitter and Instagram yesterday. Epic is offering 3 games for free on the Epic Store. All just, I think it ends on Thursday here in Taiwan, so it would be Wednesday if you're before UTC. So keep that in mind if you're if you're a student or you're looking for free games. They've got some really cool games that you can get for free. And thanks for that, Adam. You want to say anything?
Uh, Speaking of the Epic games, have you heard about Core?
Yes, yes,
Supposed to be
yes.
a competitor with Roblox in a
hmm
way. Yeah, I was thinking about maybe I should check that out. Maybe I should finally make an Epic account and check that out.
I wanted to check it out and see how easy it is, so I can maybe do that for my programming class, Wednesday class, anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, that looks. I might have to finally do that. So we'll see. All right, but yeah, that's basically what a Korean said. Contact us and let us know what's going on, and we love hearing from you guys. So let us hear from you guys.
All right, and thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you guys next week, Tuesday at the same time. See you guys later.